Director, Center for the Study of Violence and Reconciliation, on the spiraling violent protests that we're seeing across the country. You've just seen what's happening in Marlborough with regards to the situation in Alexandra, and we are asking, are they politically motivated, and what do violent protests say about South Africa's state of mind, South Africans especially, their state of minds as we go to the elections. And we'll also talk about this, the fact that several South African cities have been rocked by violent demonstrations by members of poor communities, angry about high taxes, poverty and a lack of land, water and housing, just to name such a few. So Nomfundo Mogapi, as I said, is joining us to talk about that. Let's first start with Ms. Mogapi, whether or not there's a commonality in the reasons behind the protests throughout the country, because the footprint does seem quite wide.
So I think we can just even start by saying that those of us who have been working with this protest as early as 2008 have been raising an alarm, saying that there is a high likelihood that as we approach the elections, there is likely to be increased violence that is related to the protest, because of two main things that almost set the stage for protest to move from being peaceful to being violent. The first is that you need to have masses that have genuine needs that have not been heard, but they are agitated. And we have been saying that from our work in the communities and from our research, the smoke that calls, we have been seeing an increasing agitation. Actually, it's not even an agitation, Tsepiso, is this desperation and hopelessness in communities where they feel that for years our needs have not been met.
Do you think they are misunderstood though? Because, and I'm reading a report by Municipal IQ that was published second quarter of last year, saying the problem is that most of these service delivery protests are not understood. In fact, people are not sure whether or not their grievances are genuine. And is this a class divide as well? If you're in Marlborough and what is happening now at the moment is by people in Alexandra, surely the disconnection is going to be there at some point.
So I think, so two things. It has been established by those of us who work in the communities and do the research that the concerns of the communities are genuine. The issue is exactly what you're talking about, is this disconnect between those who have this lived experience of being increasingly marginalized in our society and those who are in position of power, who first of all don't seem to fully appreciate just the depth of the pain that people have, but also secondly, which has been the biggest issue we've been saying as the Center for the Study of Violence and Reconciliation, is the inability of those in power to hear the cries of the people. So when they go to places, instead of talking to the people and their needs, they will focus on the third force, on other political parties, and that is what fuels the anger of the people.
So people feel like they're not seen, they're not heard.
Communities have been saying to us that not only are we now using violence in the protest as a language to be heard, but for us, we are using it as a currency to gain our rights, because we feel that we've tried. Communities say to us, we've tried everything over the years. So any vehicle that we have that will make those in power to hear us, of course, there's no other vehicle more than the elections for people to be heard. So it's a desperate cry to say, can you hear what we are going through? Can you hear our needs? Can we hear? If people are just saying, if we can feel that they can hear us and they will make a change. So when leaders go in, and in their pursuit of their political agenda or whatever, they again repeat the same script we've seen over and over again. Instead of talking to the people, they talk to what they see as the opposition or the third party or the economic entrepreneurs. And for a decade now, our research was released in 2011, we have been talking to leaders and saying that when you go to these masses, you need to have an appreciation of what we call the restless psyche of a society. You can't be careless about the things that you do.
And I want to know,
so,
I might be accused of doing so unfairly, but it is an unfolding situation as we speak now. What is happening in Marlborough? Residents there saying they're preventing Herman Mashaba from speaking because they've been appealing to him for more than 2 weeks to come and address them, that he's refused to do so. Our reporter says the date was carefully chosen because it's part of periodic meetings that are held to discuss such issues. So is there an arrogance, like some have said, accusing the mayor of being arrogant by not only ignoring the people, but the fact that he chose a venue that is far removed from where the actual problems are?
You see, what we are seeing unfold in Alexandra is exactly what we had expected. And I want to take it beyond just the mayor. It's just how the political parties have reacted. There has been the discourse of political parties has been attacking each other. There hasn't been a sense that we are hearing what your needs are. Whether it's Mashaba, whether it's the premier, whether it's the president, the focus is on the DAs. It almost feels like it is a fight between the political parties rather than the concerns of the people. So let me then interrupt and ask you two questions in tandem. So the political parties, as you say, have been trading blame about who's responsible, but then reducing the protests themselves to say they are politically motivated. Is that a fair assertion? And does it point to a collapse of local leadership? So one of the things that we found in this research that we did is that there might be people who use the protest to drive their political or economic agenda. But the issue is, what is the focus of attention of the leaders? And we had said it to them that when you make those people to be more of a focus attention than the needs of the communities, that's where the danger actually is. So for me, it's not even the question of, is the people using this for their political advantage? But the question is, as you as a leader, do you have the ability to go beyond the temptation to respond to these people and actually respond to the people directly? And unfortunately, I have what I call leaders who are almost asleep to themselves, if not wounded, who are so focused on attacking each other or winning the elections or doing than listening to the people. And that is our biggest issue with the leaders that we have. Even if those people are there, even if they are trying to use the people, why can't you as a leader speak in such a way that builds the social fabric of the society? Because at the end of the day, the issue is beyond this one day of election. You are the ones who will lead these people. So if in trying to get elections, you are actually deepening the very things that divided us in the past, and you are destroying the very same social fabric that we need to build society, what are you actually doing? So
the research suggests that most of these protests occur around informal settlements, but that you are also seeing them in the big metros. And I want to find out if there is a rural and urban bias in the nature of how these protests unfold. And I'd like to point to Ennerdale, the visuals that we saw of how police were dealing with the residents. Is there either fatigue or just completely seeing people as a nuisance, that these things are too repetitive? These protests are so often in our face that it's just another protest, another bunch of annoying people.
I think it's really sad that we've just become so numbed to the lived experiences of the people. So what has happened is, what we had found is that when the protest comes, of course people hear and there's violence, leaders go and listen to people, but there is no sustained change in the lives of the people. So one of the biggest things is that we are not making a difference in the Vuani still remains and the challenges still remain. And yes, most of the violence initially was very much located within the urban settings and the metros, but we've had places like the Stag Parade in the Eastern Cape where there's an increasing violence happening. What I said when I started was, all you need is the stage where the masses are agitated. They've got genuine concerns. They've tried over a period of time. They feel not heard.
So
and the leaders who are unable to hear the people, and actually their response fuels the anger.
So they have a genuine concerns, and as you say, the masses who are agitated. There has been a jump of almost 4 million in terms of the number of informal settlements in this country in the past 25 years. But there's a suggestion that because of lack of access to information, it is fertile ground for rumors to spread about who's getting what, who is addressing what issue, and who's being unduly favored. Is this reflected in the psyche of some of the protesters that you speak to?
Look, I mean, definitely the issues of lack of communication and connection with the people on the ground, and the failure of the feedback loop between those in power and those on the ground has been highlighted to definitely be one of the issues that actually fuels this violence, and communities that constantly feeling that their concerns are not necessarily being heard. So that has been one of the things that we feel that has actually driven some of the violence that has happened. And the fact that there has been this increased messaging around corruption in our society. So most people feel they've got this perception that I can't access what I want because of what people are connected to. And the corruption, the messages around the corruption actually feeds that and say, actually, that's the reason why this is happening, because of this corruption.
So we saw a very interesting outcome of the last local government elections. We saw coalition agreements with several opposition parties. Has this translated into a more wide view of political views in the metro councils? Have we seen greater voices of the people being heard through this more representative councils, so to speak?
I mean, unfortunately, I think what has happened is that the divisions have gotten worse rather than better, because the people who are in position of power have actually become fueled the very same dynamic. Instead of focusing on the needs of the people and using coalition as an opportunity to recreate a different South Africa, that we reimagined South Africa, they focused their energy on the infights. I mean, there's been more fights within most of these political spaces, rather than focusing on saying, can we show the people of South Africa that if we are a coalition, we can begin to do things differently? And that has fed. And if you look at some of this violence, it's actually in the places where there's been this coalition governments. So instead of actually assisting us to strengthen democracy, it has made the situation worse.
So during this period, how do you draw the line, or where do you draw the line in understanding what is political opportunism and what is unethical behavior? We've spoken about the fact that political parties are trading blame and accusations about who's actually trying to take advantage of very desperate situations of communities. But where do we draw the line in what is, during campaigning, political opportunism, which is fair game, and what is unethical behavior?
And for me, considering what we know in the communities, is that the question is not even that. Because the minute you ask that question, your focus of attention becomes the political opportunism, rather than what is the needs of the people, and how can we have leaders who can shift away from using their energies on political opportunism, but focus their energies on the issues of the people and how they're going to solve those issues. That is the question.
All right, thank you very much. Nomfundo Mogapi is Executive Director, Center for the Study of Violence and Reconciliation. This has been Political View.
This is the SABC News Channel, independent and impartial.
When news happens around the world, we will bring it to you. We will keep you informed. Each day, every day, our news team digs deeper, getting all the facts to provide comprehensive reports to what's important to you. We cover all corners of the globe. SABC News, independent and impartial.
The Zimbabwean government says it's now planning to give compensation to white farmers who were forced off the land they occupied by the government of Robert Mugabe.
For reasons of political expedience, this attempt is driven by opportunism and is bound to further deepen the political and economic crisis in Zimbabwe.
A small group of people chanted Makashule's name at the launch in Sandton City. They allegedly ripped apart some copies of the book and threw the pages around.
Clearly that book wants to divide South Africans.
We wanted to make it very clear that we stand by this book and we stand by Peter Louis Myburgh as an outstanding author.
Please, short, sharp, don't tell us stories. Just get to the question. Just hold on. Just hold on. Please hold on. Please hold on. Please hold on.
Sort of things.
So, but we'll get to the floor. We'll get you an opportunity to ask these questions and interrogate these leaders. The people are saying you are talking, and it's all rhetoric at the moment, but there doesn't seem to be any action to back that up.
Welcome back. A month after Cyclone Idai tore through Mozambique, Malawi and Zimbabwe, UNICEF says 1.6 million children are still very vulnerable to disease and a lack of food. In Mozambique alone, 1 million children need help. Nearly 500,000 more in Malawi also need food and medicines. Cholera and malaria cases are now being diagnosed in Mozambique after that cyclone hit. James Elders, the Regional Chief of Communications for Eastern and Southern Africa for UNICEF, he joins us now by Skype from Nairobi. James, good evening to you. Thank you very much indeed for your time. You're obviously particularly worried about children in Mozambique. What are you worried about?
Yeah, I think we're worried that the sheer number, like you say, 1 million, and when I was recently in Mozambique, you're reminded time